Today we're going to be taking a look at PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is an early access game right now on Steam. We're going to be talking a little bit about the gameplay as well as some initial performance testing that I have done on the game, because one of the things that I've noticed after first booting up the game is that it is wildly inconsistent as far as the performance is concerned, but it is early access, so hopefully that stuff does get ironed out over time. But the important thing is that despite the performance issues, where even playing on a GTX 1080 Ti, I've regularly seen drops down into the mid-40s and 50 FPS at 1440p, the gameplay is just so fun and addicting that it really hasn't hampered my experience in any way, at least in regards to just how the game is running. It's still very playable in its current state. There are a fair amount of bugs in the game, so you should know about that going into it. I've had a few crashes or parts where the game would lock up in loading screens, things along those lines. So you should know that going into this, but it is available right now on Steam Early Access for $30. So you have the option of trying it out at least, and if you don't like it, you could always get a refund because of Steam's refund policy program. So what exactly is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds? Well, it's a Battle Royale game from PlayerUnknown, who is basically the guy who invented the genre here on the PC. He originally started out by doing modding work for Arma 2, which then evolved into developing Battle Royale modes for games like H1Z1, and now he is actually working on his own full release title along with Bluehole Studios. So they're working on this game with him as the lead director, designing all of the game elements and stuff like that. So if you are into the Battle Royale genre, chances are you're familiar with PlayerUnknown's mod work throughout titles like Arma, probably things like DayZ as well, H1Z1. So that's really the focus of this game, is that it's a Battle Royale type experience similar to maybe like Hunger Games, where you just kind of drop in, everyone drops out of an airplane at the start of the round, and then you have to run out and scavenge for gear. You have to find weapons, clothing, armor, ammo, bandages, first aid kits, what have you, everything you will need to survive the Battle Royale mode, which is on an 8x8 kilometer island, which is also always shrinking as the player count starts to tick down. At the start of the round, you have 99 players, and as people begin to die, the area that you can actually battle in shrinks, and if you stay outside that area, eventually a blue wall will kind of come towards you and you'll begin to take damage if you don't get into the battle area immediately. And you can traverse around on foot, or you can find various types of vehicles, jeeps, buggies, what have you, to be able to get around on the map. I don't believe there are any helicopters or anything like that at this time, but who knows, maybe in the future they could. It's very early access right now, and also with the options for modding, which is coming in the future, players will be able to create their own custom game modes and mod the game to their heart's content on the Unreal Engine 4. So to touch on performance, right now we're in the main menu here. I'm going to go into the settings and give you guys a quick look at the graphics options here. I did do some testing here between two different systems using the GTX 1080. I tested on my i7 6800K build, which is at 4.3 gigahertz, and I also tested on my Ryzen 1800X build, where I've got that CPU at 4 gigahertz, and we will do some side-by-sides here in a minute, which was rather difficult to do actually because of how inconsistent the game can be with just where you spawn in. Because when you spawn in, like I said, you're on an airplane, and you got to kind of you choose when you get to jump off of the airplane, so you can land in a variety of different areas, and the plane also comes in at different angles all the time. And then again, you also have to have the risk of being shot as well once you are on the ground, and possibly messing up an entire benchmark run. So it took me quite a while just to be able to get two runs, which I thought was consistent enough to be able to do a comparison between the two systems running on the GTX 1080. And I wanted to really focus on the two systems with the CPUs and the one GPU, because a lot of the performance issues do seem to lie in the processor side of things and not so much the GPU. It does seem to get CPU bottlenecked fairly consistently, no matter which system I was really testing on. So, like I said, I was testing on ultra settings, so here we are. I was on the ultra quality preset, but we do have options in here for anti-aliasing, post-processing, shadows, textures, effects, foliage, as well as view distance, and you could turn motion blur on or off if you want, but I did run that off. And all of these options here, they just run from very low all the way up to ultra. So you do have a decent amount of customization here. We don't have specifics on, which form of anti-aliasing is being used, things along those lines, or what is bundled in with post-processing. But for an early access game, I'm pretty pleased with the amount of graphics options that we have in here. I have tried tinkering around with playing down at high and medium, although that didn't really seem to net me a ton of performance because, as I mentioned before, the game does seem to be fairly CPU bottlenecked, as you will see in the side-by-side comparison here. So taking a look at the side-by-side comparison here, you'll be able to see the frame rates as well as the CPU usage between the two different systems, so you can get an idea of how this game is running. Through this area that I tested in Rozhok, which is right dead center on the map, and I use that because the plane generally does go over the center of the map at some point, so I was able to get pretty darn close to there every time when I dropped in, as long as I was able to survive the initial landing and getting to the benchmark area, which certainly did not happen on the first try. It took me a few tries to actually get there and be able to complete this benchmark run without being killed, so yeah, it was quite a bit of work just being able to get these couple of runs here, like I said. So I went through here, and I think you'll be able to see that the game did seem to be running a little bit more consistently on the 1800X, just a little bit. The averages here ended up being exactly the same between the two CPUs. The 6800K ended up getting an average of 61 FPS with a minimum of 33, and this is at 1440p on those ultra settings with just the GTX 1080, where the 1800X ended up getting the same average at 61 FPS, but a minimum of 46. And I think a lot of that is coming down to the fact that it has the additional cores and threads to be able to process the game on, and hopefully over time this optimization does get better from Bluehole working on this game, because this is early access, so I would hope that performance is going to get better over time. But in large open world games like this, generally like Arma, DayZ, H1Z1, we do tend to see a much larger CPU bottleneck than the GPU, and I think you'll be able to see that going through here, because very rarely does the GPU actually get up to full 99% utilization. Oftentimes it's around 60 to 70 or 80% usage, but it did look like on the 1800X side, after looking at the side-by-side myself afterwards, that the 1800X was getting higher GPU utilization than the 6800K, so it seemed to be less CPU bottlenecked on the Ryzen processor. So this is the performance that we've got here for now, right now in PlayerUnknown's Battleground. We will have to wait for patches to come from the developer, hopefully getting better performance over time. But I just wanted to give a quick overview on this game for you guys that maybe are interested in a type of game like this, as I don't think too many, I mean, there are a lot of players right now playing this game. Looking on the Steam surveys, we can see that right now this is actually the 4th most played game on Steam, only trailing behind H1Z1, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and Dota 2. So H1Z1 King of the Kill and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds are very similar type of games, but Battlegrounds is pretty darn new to the scene. I think they made like something like $11 million in the first few days that it was up for sale, and right now the peak players for today was 87,000 people, while King of the Kill was 103,000 people. So this game is very fastly becoming popular on Steam with a lot of users out there, so I thought some people may want to look to this for, you know, performance, as a lot of people are having concerns out there. There is actually even a console command that you can go ahead and enable in the Steam profile settings. If you can put that on, and it will enable all cores for your CPU. Although I didn't notice any performance difference going between these two between having this option turned on or the option turned off of having all CPU cores enabled, because by default it was actually using all the CPU cores to begin with. So it didn't seem to offer me any benefit, but there are a lot of people out there talking about this console command option, so I wanted to mention it for you. I'll leave a link to an article down below which talks about it and shows how to put this option on if you want to put it on for your game, to see if it can give you a performance boost in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. But I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like down below and comment. Let me know what you thought about this kind of more freestyle format of looking at the performance here. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sir.